Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Manzoor Pare. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Higher Education, Government of J&K. Uh, Today, we are going to talk on a very important topic, which is especially important for students. Now, our today's topic is about a language which, whether we like it or not, which as a students and then as a teachers, we need to understand and understand it very well. Now, you might have already guessed that I'm talking about English language. Now, there are around plus 6,000 languages in the world, but English is a language which is spoken roughly in around 120 countries. Now, we could debate that why English is important and if at all it is important. But the fact of the matter is that uh, our communications, whether the language of internet, computer, science, is all in English. So it's important that as a non-native speakers, initially it's a little difficult to understand this language. So, but that doesn't make us that doesn't mean we will not learn. We have the experts, we have the writers and scholars of English who have not been native English speakers in the real sense. So today I have invited a very important guest, Mr. Shabir Ahmed Khan. Mr. Shabir Ahmed Khan is basically a teacher in the school education department of J&K. He's teaching in the Badgam district of the Kashmir. Uh, as I have been seeing him for quite a long time, he's well versed in English language and he has a fair amount of hold on this language, and he has taught thousands of students and even teachers how to improve your language skills. So, in this backdrop, I have invited him to have a conversation on English language. Now, we will start, Shabir Saab, with the first question. Why English? Why is so much of importance given to English as a language? Shabir Saab.
Uh, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank you for having me on the other side. It really is an honor for me because you have been my teacher, and I couldn't ask for more. Being in conversation with a teacher is something that has really been very much joyful and pleasing for me. It's an honor that I really cherish.
Thank you.
As far as English language, why it is important? Basically, English language is important because it is spoken all over the world. As you just mentioned in the introduction, in the very introduction, I should say, that it is spoken in around 120 countries and maybe more because we don't have the precise data. So that is why it is so important because it's the language of commerce, it's the language of trade and commerce, it's the language of uh, I should say academics. It is the language of science and technology. That's why it's very important because goods are produced in English. It's a commodified language. Your trade and commerce is taking place in English, and it is also the language of statesmen. It is the language of diplomacy. That's why it's so important. And uh, as far as the scientific knowledge, philosophy, etc., that has reached us via English language. That's why so much of importance is given to English language.
Thank you. So then, since of course it's very important language, as from the inception I have been
It is.
arguing. Now, as a non-native speakers of English, how can we improve English as a language, and how can we aspire to, and can we really aspire to be very fluent in English language as good as native speakers are?
Well, there are so many strategies, there are so many ways, and a person can do a lot to improve his English speaking skills. First of all, we have to cultivate a habit of listening to the language, listening to good language, because unless and until we take acquisition of language as something that has its dividends, only then can we appreciate the fact that we need to put our endeavors in this way, in this regard. And more importantly, I should say that when you listen, you unconsciously pick up language. Language learning is a delight, and we should take it that way.
Okay. So great.
That's why, and as far as you are talking about strategies, let me point out a few. First of all, as I said, listening is very much important. It's indispensable to speaking, because language stands on four pillars. One is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So we have to listen. We have to listen to the native speakers. We have to speak. We have to listen to whosoever speaks English, whether he is our friend, he is our teacher, or whether we can know English via YouTube, via Hollywood movies, whatever. There are so many avenues nowadays. In our times, when I was a student, learning English was only limited to your teachers or radio, etc. But in present times, English language learning is not confined to a few avenues. You have YouTube, you have internet, you have so many opportunities, and you have so many academies who are basically doing those crash courses, etc. And that definitely help. So first
Oh,
of all, you have to listen to good communication, listen to good language. This is the first strategy. Second is, you have to try to speak. Once you have listened, then you just try to speak. Don't be hesitant, don't be shy, and don't bother about grammar, don't bother about making mistakes. Unless and until we make mistakes, we don't learn.
okay.
Making mistake is prerequisite, and it is a precondition for learning. Since you
Okay.
are well versed with education, education psychology, there is always a room for improvement, and improvement only comes when we try, when we strive towards some goal.
Okay.
And
So there is
this
something
is,
like as you were mentioning early while answering my early question, that grammar. No, now of course we know that every language has its own grammar. Now
yes.
is it absolute necessary? Does grammar really matter, or can we do without grammar?
Well, basically, grammar is the core or a kernel of a language. There's no doubt about that. No denying the fact that grammar is indispensable to language. But while we are talking about speaking English, grammar is not that important. What matters is the comprehension, is the communicability. That is what I feel. I feel that once you are heard, once you are understood, that's all. And if you have good command over grammar, it adorns your language, it beautifies your language. For example, you have if you have hold on grammar, then you have lucidity, you have clarity as far as speaking language is concerned. But when you don't have grammar, you can still communicate and put forth your point.
Okay, good. So now, as someone who has who have myself been a government school product now, and I could see a lot of my students in colleges and in fact in schools. Initially, they have a lot of hesitancy and shyness while initiating the conversations in English. Now, for students, for my students, and for students who are doing graduations or are currently in 11th or 12th, how can they remove this initial hesitancy and uncertainty?
Well, to be fair enough, when I started speaking English, I too was hesitant. I was shy. I was afraid of speaking. I was afraid of making mistakes. But then you should have good teachers who can basically bring out best in you. I had, luckily enough, I had good teachers who propped me up, who encouraged me, who stood me up in morning assemblies, in presentations, and they wanted me to speak. And I initially started with commentary, radio commentary. I described the scene in which a player was batting, and there were fielders all around him. He was trapped, and then how he managed to score runs. That's what the scenario was, and I was just visualizing the picture and describing it to the audience. That way, my hesitation and my shyness gradually uh, went away, it vanished. That's,
Okay.
I think, very important, that you must speak no matter where, no matter when, and no matter how. If you cannot be fluent right from the word beginning, right from the word go, you cannot be fluent, you cannot be speaking with a flow. You got to have to be a bit basically fumbling, faltering, etc. Only then can you speak, because once you start, once you begin, then there's no ending. There's It is always going forward, because we learn when we endeavor. This is my first statement. And teachers have a role to play here. Teachers need to encourage their students. They don't need to reprimand and reproach them if they make mistakes. That's very important. We need to be very much encouraging. We need to be motivating enough for our students. But what I have unfortunately seen is that we pounce upon a student when he or she makes mistakes. That's very unfortunate. We must allow them. We must have that much room for our students in our hearts and in our classrooms, to be to allow them to speak without hesitation, without shyness, even if they are making mistakes.
Right. So, lastly, I would like to ask you one more important question. Now, there is something called pronunciation, pronouncing of words. Now, what I have and myself, I have been saying in my conversation with the people, that even if some people, or I personally, are I am able to communicate with the people, but there are some mistakes. Which, as far as pronunciation is concerned, we are not able to correct our pronunciation, and how is it possible, or how can a non-native speaker like me and you and others, how can we improve pronunciation in English language?
Bef- Before I answer your question, let me complete the answer to first question, second question rather. That is, what are the strategies of acquiring English language? That was, I think, the second question. Was it?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I talked about listening, I talked about speaking. But the very important thing for a English learner or a learner of any language is reading. Reading is very much important. It is something that advances you, that builds up your vocabulary, it increases your vocabulary, it enhances your command of a language. It also thought process. You have so many. For example, if you read a novel, if you read an article, if you read no matter what interests you, read what interests you. I'm not Since I'm a student of literature, I would suggest that those who study literature should read poetry, should read novels, etc. But those who are interested in other enterprises of life, like sports, like science, social science, etc., they should read the books of their interest. So, reading is very much important. Read whatever you like, read whatever interests you, but read no matter when and where, because it is very much important. uh, Once your vocabulary adds up, when your vocabulary keeps increasing, you are a better communicator, because you will have two or three expressions for a single thought. You will express that thought in multiple ways that will enhance your creativity. That's very much important. And then writing. Once we write, writing also gives us command over language. For example, I have been writing articles, etc., on Facebook and elsewhere. I think writing has helped me a lot in building vocabulary and using and putting to practice the vocabulary that I have acquired while reading. So I think these two pillars are very important. Now, coming to the last question that you've asked about the pronunciation. Pronunciation is very much important. Why? Because uh, when we communicate with wrong pronunciation, we are likely to be misunderstood. We are likely to be we are like to be misinterpreted. For example, take the opportunity of sharing an anecdote with you. Once I was, we were, I and my friend, we were going in a on a board written features of our coaching institute are salient salient features, they have written silent features. You can well understand they had made a mess of the word salient and they had written silent, silent. That was because they had the pronunciation, because we tend to pronounce silent and salient the similar way. There are so many words where we commit mistakes as far as pronunciation is concerned. So pronunciation is very important because it enhances your chances of being understood. It enhances the chances of your communicability or communication with foreigners, because they definitely will hear you only when you utter the words, articulate the words with right pronunciation. That's very important.
Okay.
That is, I think for example, when we talk about Urdu, we talk about Arabic, we give so much of importance of so much importance, so much what I should say, so much importance to pronunciation. For example, we say Urdu talaf is very important. Unless and until you have command over Urdu language, you cannot participate in any seminars, poetry recitations, etc. And Arabic, being Muslims, we have to be proficient in Arabic. But why do we disparage people who are good at pronunciation? Why don't we learn pronunciation in English language? It is, after all, a language, and it is one of the languages that is richest. It has great literature. It has great philosophy behind it. And for example, when we speak in a right manner with right pronunciation, it delights audiences. For example, uh, if you have speakers A and B, one is not proficient in pronunciation and the other is proficient in pronunciation. Of course, the content, what they say, also matters, but how they say it is also very much important. So
Yes.
I think pronunciation is
Okay, right.
indispensable to
Right,
language.
right, Shabir sir, because there is some network issue at your end. I think we should call it a day. I am very thankful to you for taking time and talking to us about a very important issue. And this important issue is, as
Well,
far as my students
actually,
are
it was
concerned, they really need it. And I'm sure that in future we'll be talking separately about grammar, then pronunciation, and different aspects of the language.
yes,
I'm sure
yes.
you'll take out time. So thank
It
you,
was,
thank you,
it was
thanks.
yes.
Uh, uh,
Thank you very much. It was pleasure having
th-
you here. It was
uh,
an honor to be
uh,
interacting with you. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
sir.
Thank you. Thanks